Herzlich willkommen zur Pressekonferenz der Group.
Welcome to the press conference of the Group of Five. Minister Pistorius welcomed his counterparts from France, Britain, Italy and Poland. We'll start with the statements as usual, then there will be time for questions and answers.
Nous sommes très heureux d'être à voir ici et bienvenue et bon courage pour votre warm welcome to Kaya. Very happy that you are here with us today too. And of course a warm welcome to you all, John and Guido. And of course to Paweł Zalewski, Staatssekretär aus dem polnischen Verteidigung.
Welcome to Paweł Zalewski, State Secretary from the Polish Ministry of Defense. We had an excellent meeting today in this Group of Five format and together with the EU High Representative. Almost exactly a year ago, on the 25th of November 2024, we set up this format here in Berlin. At the time it was Catherine's predecessor, Sébastien Lecornu, and myself. We started this new idea, and today we can rightly say that this format proved to be a success. As you know, our group aims at strengthening European defense and security. We are representatives of the 5 countries in Europe that have the largest defense budgets, and as such, we promote the support for Ukraine and try to enhance it. We have very candid and open discussions in this group. Unlike other international groups, we do not use prepared statements. We have a free and open and candid discussion. In a larger group, that would be difficult. But this enables us to openly discuss new ideas, new approaches, and then we can work on these ideas and then communicate them to our partners and friends. We talked about our ideas of procurement at the European level. This is about, finally simplifying and streamlining rules and regulations governing the defense industry, and I'm happy to say that the EU immediately took up this ball by means of the defense omnibus. When it comes to supporting Ukraine, we started new approaches as well. We started cooperative endeavors between our countries and the companies concerned, and when it comes to financing the production of long-range drones in Ukraine, we have been very successful as well. Ukraine is now facing its 4th winter in this war against Russia, and Russia intentionally attacks the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. Putin is trying to make the winter as unbearable as possible for Ukrainians. He wants to destroy their morale. He wants to break their resistance. So far, he's been unsuccessful. Nevertheless, these attacks are terrible, outrageous, and a blatant violation of international law, international human law. It is clear to us that we will not abandon Ukraine. They can continue to rely on us. This is what we told and assured our Ukrainian colleague, Denis Shmyhal. He was connected by a video link, and he gave us an update regarding the situation in Ukraine. For Germany, I can say Germany is prepared to keep on supporting Ukraine and to enhance our support. Yesterday, the Bundestag accepted my proposal of expanding our help for Ukraine next year. Next year, it will be more than 11.5 billion euros. As you know, Germany also participates in the so-called Pearl mechanism, which is to say we finance weapon systems that can only be purchased in the United States. And for that, we have the prioritized Ukraine requirements list. These are systems that are manufactured in the United States and only there, and that are urgently needed by Ukraine. For example, the Patriot system, including the missiles needed for it. Last autumn, Germany took on the financing of one of these packages to the tune of 500 million euros. And that's news. Yesterday, we decided to participate in another package. I talked about it with Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, and we decided that we would commit to spending at least another 150 million euros to participate in this package. So again, we are making progress. Another important subject was the topic of hybrid attacks. We had another discussion on this, and it is quite clear that Russia is trying to distract from its own problems. For example, the successful strikes of Ukraine in deep in Russian territory and the high losses at the front line, and they are trying to intimidate our societies. Russia is trying to intimidate us. We have decided to respond to these hybrid attacks and to speak with one voice. The steps we've taken have been successful, nationally, bilaterally, with the NATO and the EU. This goes for the NATO-led activity Baltic Sentry. It's also true for anti-drone measures. The Bundeswehr, for example, the Bundeswehr Air Force took steps, and they can be deployed very quickly, and right now they are in Belgium. So we are acting as a team, we complement each other, and we learn from each other. The same goes for an initiative brought up by my colleague John Healey on procuring low-cost anti-drone effectors. At the last Group of Five meeting, we discussed it, and by the next time we intend to be ready for signature. Thank you very much, John, for your initiative. We all are determined to act as one in Europe. We want to advance our capability to defend ourselves. Ukraine will continue to depend on us, and they can depend on us. We will continue to send out the signal and to start the discussions that we need and to act together. Thank you very much for the great cooperation we've enjoyed with you, in spite of the seriousness of the situation. Thank you. Catherine, you have the word.
Pour cet accueil, et je dois dire que je suis ravie d'être.
Thank you very much for a warm welcome, and I'm very happy to be in Berlin today. I'm happy to discuss these important matters of shared security. Last year, on the 24th of November last year, we had the first meeting in this format, and let me tell you, Boris, that our Prime Minister, my predecessor, is very interested in this topic. He believes it is very important, and I can say these discussions have been very interesting this morning. Let me stress, first of all, our support for Ukraine, and I'd like to reiterate that we will continue to support Ukraine as long as it takes. Ukraine is in the front line of this war of aggression that was forced upon it by Russia. Ever since the beginning, we have shown our solidarity at the European level. This is a constant and concrete support that we provide. The French president is going to meet President Zelensky next Monday in Paris. He will receive him there, and we intend to force Russia to the negotiating table. The 19th package of sanctions against Russia was passed on the 23rd of October. I am convinced it will be necessary to further deepen our cooperation when it comes to implementing these sanctions. As you know, what we first of all wish for is that the Russian shadow fleet will no longer be able to avoid these sanctions. We're talking about 100 ships that deliver oil and thus are in violation of the sanctions. Our French President Macron is very clear in his reaction. We will keep on stepping up this pressure to make sure that this business model that Russia has will not be successful. We are actively involved in the coalition of the willing format, co-led by the United Kingdom, and the aim is, of course, to provide security guarantees for Ukraine. The first steps to be taken will be to send forces to Ukraine to make sure that Russia will be deterred from starting another attack. The coalition of the willing is an expression of our responsibility that we have as Europeans and that we're willing to take on in order to ensure that our continent remains safe. Let me also comment on the defense of the European continent. It's not just Russia that decided to attack Ukraine, but the resilience and the unity of our continent was likewise attacked. It wasn't just Ukraine that they attacked. So words are not enough. We must act. And we must do so by resolutely supporting Ukraine and by making sure the alliance can be strengthened as well to help ensure security. And we must face these challenges together. We must strengthen the European pillar within NATO. We must better coordinate our activities between NATO and Europe, and we must take on our share of the responsibility. All of us make major efforts by providing the finances, improving our capabilities, and to make sure that we build up a real defense industrial basis here in Europe. Our industry are competent, they have enough potential, we're going to invest in that, and we want to benefit from economies of scale that way. I'm happy to say that the High Representative of the European Union is here with us today. This is about combining our efforts to make sure that our production capacities in key areas can be improved so that our defense will be ensured in future. Of course, we must make sure that the taxpayers, European taxpayers' money is used as efficiently as possible, and to make sure that we are in a position to guarantee our own safety based on a strong defense industry. That is very important to us. Thank you very much.
Sì, grazie a tutti. Grazie Boris.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Boris. Unfortunately, there's no sound arriving. There's no sound. The interpreters can't hear. All right, now.
Start, please.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you, Kaya. Sentite adesso?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Kaya. Can you hear me now? Yes, excellent. So, thank you for this discussion. We started them to find a path to strengthen our security and our defense, to strengthen the EU and NATO, to bring the nations together, bring together those nations who contribute most to European defense. And after 1 year, we've made a lot of progress. One, because we talked about our experience, about our expectations, about our problems. We tried to find solutions for that. In our work, we have the complete agreement of the European Union to work together with us, and also a willingness to reduce red tape that used to be an obstacle in order to strengthen our European cooperation. We try to bring together European defense and industry more and use synergies to support Ukraine. Everyone has their individual issues. Today we addressed additional ones. We talked about cyber attacks and other hybrid attacks that are directed against our nations and our populations, and we discussed how we can counter that. We'd like to thank Dennis for joining us online to tell us about the situation in Ukraine on the ground now at the onset of the fourth winter. And we reaffirmed that the entire West is at its side. We talked about problems. We thanked Dennis and President Zelensky that they are prepared to counter corruption in their country. And we also saw how Russia is trying to use disinformation in situations like that. The High Representative told us an important date. She pointed out, she said that 93% of Russian attacks are directed against civilian targets. There's hardly any military targets, and So there is a war of Russia against the Ukrainian population, and Europe has understood that from day one, and that's the reason why we stand by the side of Ukraine steadfastly. We're not leaving them alone, because Ukraine's fight is not fought for ideology, but it's fought because Putin's expansionism is at the root of that. And if we had not supported Ukraine, we don't know what we would have faced. So Ukraine has helped us to reposition ourselves. I'm talking about myself now, but I could talk about Germany, UK, Poland, France. Maybe they had a different posture, but our defense capacities were more geared towards international crisis management. And in the last 3 years, we changed a lot, Germany too. And so we talked about, for example, we started addressing issues that we hadn't addressed before. The role of NATO, not at the Eastern Front, but at the Northern and Southern Front too. That is all becoming more and more important for our nations, for our economies. And we need to be aware that we need to strengthen our armed forces because the growth of investment in defense for Germany and for the European people, well, what's happening here is important for France. What's happening in France is important for the Italians. Everything is important for everyone else. That's what it means being European. That's what it means addressing the situation properly. And this format has allowed us to take steps forward, to solve problems. And that's why we're going to continue with this format, because we have a responsibility politically, militarily, to address this new era of defense. We have one goal only: to ensure stability, security, peace for our populations. Thank you.
A year ago, we came together as 5 nations, defence ministers from NATO nations, Italy, France, Germany, Poland and the UK. Europe's 5 biggest defence spenders. And in the year since, the threats against our nations and against Europe have only increased, with reckless drone incursions into Poland, Russian jets flying over Estonia, and NATO nations consulting through Article 4, not once but twice. Russian aggression is growing, the war in Ukraine continues to rage, and the US has rightly challenged European nations to do more and to spend more on defence. So today, the E5 is more important now than it was a year ago, and we will continue to strengthen the E5 in the year ahead. Stepping up still further on Ukraine through the Ukraine Defence Contact Group that Boris Pistorius and I jointly chair, stepping up through the Coalition of the Willing, which France and the UK jointly lead, stepping up on our joint industrial cooperation, and also stepping up with our militaries, training, exercising and innovating together. Because make no mistake, we are in a new era of threat, and this demands a new era for defence. And as the UK government, we take the defence of Europe extremely seriously. And with this UK government, we are and we will play a serious role in defending both our homeland and all our nations. We'll do that through NATO, and we'll do that bilaterally with deployments alongside our E5 allies together. And we're doing that right now. Right now, the British Army is taking part in Exercise Gaulish with France. Right now, our Navy is taking part in Exercise Falcon Strike with Italy. Right now, our RAF are flying over Poland, defending NATO airspace. And right now, our teams in RAF Lossiemouth are preparing to host new German P-8s that will fly and be able to fly from that base. And beyond the E5, we've responded rapidly to the recent drone attacks. Last month, I deployed counter-drone specialists to Denmark. Last weekend, I deployed drone experts to Belgium, who I can confirm today I've extended. And today, I can also confirm that I've now deployed members of the 12 Regiment to conduct counter-drone operations in Finland. And we stand here today as 5 defence ministers representing 5 proud NATO nations. But as defence ministers, we also have the honour of standing here to represent our armed forces across the E5 and across NATO. They work 24/7, 365 days a year, often unseen, often unheard, often unrecognised. And so I thank them. We thank them. We thank them for their professionalism and their dedication, for their role in defending Europe. They keep us safe today. They will keep us safe in the future as we, the defence ministers of the E5, ensure that we step up as nations together. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Herr Staatssekretär.
Thank you, State Secretary Zalewski. Thank you very much that you have created this framework, that you've created a platform for our discussions. Dear colleagues, I'm delighted about the discussions that we had. I'm honored to be part of it. I'm representing my defense minister here, Mr. Kamisch, who was unable to come today. On behalf of him, I would like to invite all of you to the next meeting of the Group of 5 at the beginning of next year. Our meeting today is already the 6th meeting in this format, and so the defense ministers of the 5 states have been coming together, those who are the biggest contributors in defense for the defense of our continent. That's very important here today, and I'm delighted that the High Representative Kaja Kallas was part of our discussions today. The scale of the challenges is immense. The tasks that the European Union is faced with are enormous, and the EU is also creating a good framework for addressing these issues. For almost 4 years now, we've had this Russian aggression against Ukraine, and we see more and more hybrid attacks on European states. We are addressing these issues together because we are convinced, and we reiterated that today, that Europe's security and the line of security, the axis of security, runs along this front line. That's why support of Ukraine is so important. That's why the discussions with Minister Šmihal were so important. We discussed projects that we want to do in order to support Ukraine further. What's relevant to mention here is that we're all pulling in the same direction. We have to firmly stand by our support to Ukraine with regard to equipment, financing, political support. All of that is critical. We want to ensure that Ukraine can also take part in SAFE, which is an important European instrument that strengthens the foundation for security in Europe, which is the defense industry, but on the other hand, it offers practical solutions to procure military goods for the European states, and we want Ukraine to be part of that. Poland is the biggest beneficiary. We want to start a project worth 40 billion euro. We want to get that off the ground until the end of the year. We want to include Ukrainian projects. We want joint venture projects between Poland and Ukraine on Poland's territory. And this is to strengthen Ukrainian defense capabilities. Acting together is so important also with regard to hybrid attacks. I am grateful to all those who have agreed to increase their contributions to Eastern Century and Baltic Century. Thank you very much that the armed forces of the UK, Germany, France and Italy are present in Poland. This presence means that the eastern flank is strengthened and it ensures that the whole continent's security is strengthened too. We also discussed about strengthening NATO. We share the belief that a strong NATO is a European NATO. And it was the American president who gave us that task, and he rightly called for a stronger European role in NATO. In The Hague, at the summit, we had the summit where we agreed higher contributions, and it's important now that these pledges are being put into practice and that the defense capabilities are realized. It's something that all European nations have supported. All these different investment projects are connected. They are all connected also to working together with the defense industry, which is another point. And then to talk about the coalition of the willing. We want to maintain our commitment. The coalition is prepared to continue to act as soon as there's a ceasefire in Ukraine. But we see very clearly that President Putin is not interested in such a ceasefire. We also discussed additional threats. We talked about the problems in the Arctic. We know how closely they are connected to the problems in the Baltics, in southern Europe, in the Mediterranean. Those threats also have their source in Africa. Those are issues that cause us great concern. And Poland, Italy, France, all these nations are interested in ensuring our joint security. In southern Europe, Russia launches activities that are a risk to all of us. We're talking about this 360-degree approach here. All regions in Europe are affected, and we are faced with multiple threats. And Russia is the originator of these. I'm glad that we will continue our discussions in Warsaw next. Today, We started with the preparations for that. We want to develop a common understanding or make some common preparations for the summit in Ankara, and that will be an important milestone on the step to strengthening security in Europe. So thank you very much, and see you again in Warsaw.
The High Representative of the EU.
We really had a very good and open discussion, so thank you everybody for that. I also want to thank Germany for further increasing its support to Ukraine from next year. The decision to increase annual support to 11.5 billion euros sends a powerful message of support. And Germany's leadership on Ukraine saves lives and sets an example for the rest of Europe. I've just returned from a meeting of G7 foreign ministers, and we all agreed that immediate and full ceasefire is a priority. But right now, Russia does not want to negotiate at all. Every time the world reaches out, Russia responds with missiles. Russia's latest attacks make abundantly clear that Russia is pressing with war, and this pattern keeps repeating. Ukraine will need more funding next year. There are several options, but using immobilized Russian assets is the most clear-cut way to sustain Ukraine's defense. It is also the way to show Russia that time is not on their side. Supporting Ukraine is a bargain compared to the cost of Russia's victory. Wars are lost by whoever runs out of money or soldiers first. That is why we continue to apply pressure on Russia with sanctions. Work is going on the 20th package of sanctions, and sanctions clearly work better when they are matched by our international partners. The latest US sanctions are already depriving Russia of revenues that it uses to fund its war. Our sanctions are hitting Russia where it hurts. Today we also spoke about the rise of hybrid attacks against Europe. Sabotage, cyber attacks, drone incursions have become a daily occurrence. We cannot accept this as the new normal. We must work together systematically to counter hybrid threats and restore deterrence. On European defence readiness, the EU has presented a clear roadmap to fill the capability gaps across 9 areas. Now the work will fill these gaps is starting. Seamless military mobility is essential for European defence readiness. We need to be able to move troops and military equipment where we need them and when we need them. Next week, I will present together with the Commission a plan to improve military mobility. And this will include proposals to make our roads, bridges, tunnels, train lines, airports and other infrastructure projects able to cope with large-scale military movements. Pool transport resources to help each other out when needed, and make the permit process for moving troops around Europe faster. Dear Boris, thank you again for welcoming us in Berlin, and thank you for Germany to playing a pivotal role in Ukraine's defense and defense of our union altogether. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Dann haben wir jetzt Zeit.
Thank you very much. We now have time for questions, and a first question has been announced. Ines Trams, the second German TV program, ZDF. I have a question for the German Minister of Defense or any other minister who's prepared to answer. Coming here, I discussed this with our correspondent in Ukraine. She gave me the current situation in Ukraine. She told me it's disastrous. More and more civilians are killed. The infrastructure on the ground is being destroyed now. Right at the beginning of winter, more and more drone attacks every day, and there's not enough air defense assets. The success quotes in counter-drone strikes is decreasing. She told us everything that you told me about. So whatever the Group of Five is doing, what Europe is doing, when will that have a decisive success? Well, looking at this development, it is hard to imagine where Ukraine would be if there hadn't been the support we've provided. That is the unpleasant truth. We ramped up production in our countries. Germany is ramping up our support every year. We procure what we can. We use the Pearl mechanism. At the same time, we are facing the same challenges that the rest of the world is facing. How quickly can the defense industries step up their production in order to compensate for these losses? And we are making massive direct investments in the Ukrainian defense industry. For example, when it comes to deep strike attack effectors, their industry has increased its production dramatically, and sometimes it's 35% that they could produce more because they have the capacities. So we're trying to do what we can, but at the same time, technological progress is advancing too. It becomes more and more difficult for Ukrainian air defense to cope with the rising number of drones and cruise missiles. And this is why, as you said, the hit rate has gone down. In October, we delivered 2 additional Patriot systems. They could have been delivered even earlier than that. If there hadn't been the shutdown in America, we needed their consent. So we are doing what we can, and it is having an effect, but not as successful as we and, of course, Ukraine would wish for. So our message is clear. We must not relent in our efforts. No follow-up question. So a second question has been now announced. Ms. Coneva from the French newspaper Le Monde. I hope I pronounced it correctly. I'm going to ask my question in French. You mentioned hybrid attacks. Both Germany and France mentioned it. There have been many victims, and there have been incursions by drones. But neither Paris nor Berlin officially mentioned the perpetrator by foreign agents, but why? And a second question on FCAS, the German-French project. By the end of the year, there's to be a decision. So can you tell me whether there's a time frame right now? Yes, I will answer both questions. I'll start with FCAS, and there I can tell you that both in the technical and the political aspects are still being worked on. It's now the 14th of November. The year isn't over yet, so we continue work on that. Your other question was about drones. That was your first question. So we have counter-drone activities, but there's also the question, who is responsible for what drone, who uses these drones, and we talked about this today. Some elements are very important here. We need to take on the responsibility to not mention the perpetrator unless we are sure we know who it was. We have many strategies in dealing with this. The same is true for all countries here. And there's a second question when it comes to who the perpetrator is, and then we're still working on that too. Yes, I can only support this. We are conducting talks, and a decision is to be made by the end of the year. So these talks are ongoing. Last week I discussed it with our Chancellor, so nothing has changed there as far as drones are concerned. Well, yes, there's not always a legally reliable proof who was responsible for a drone attack, but there's usually some evidence, and there's the question as to who benefits from a drone attack, cui bono, as they say. So when you think about that, you come up with a result very quickly. When airports in Belgium have to close down because of a drone threat, that clearly has to do with the discussion about using Russian assets. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to come up with that conclusion. So some conclusions are more plausible than others. On the other hand, 30 years ago, certain things were clear. We said it's very clear what the situation is. But today it's different. It's more blurred. There are these hybrid attacks, and it is often difficult to tell what an attack is and who it is by. It goes for drones, it goes for interfering with elections, and it goes for other kinds of meddling with our affairs. We have to be prepared to act, but we must make sure we do not promote any escalation of the situation. That's the last thing we want. Next question, Ms. Audino from La Stampa. Good afternoon, Minister Cosetto. My question is, have you informed your counterparts about the list detailing how you are planning to support Kiev, and has there been a decision? Well, I'm in Berlin today, not in Italy, so I haven't discussed that. I spoke to my colleagues about what support Italy is going to give to Kiev. We are talking about 800 million that we are providing in terms of generators to be sent to Ukraine to make sure they can make it through the winter. And it's also about 12 million to be sent to Ukraine likewise. So our support for Ukraine will not cease. And as we heard, 93% of Russian attacks are against flats, hospitals, schools. So we are going to do all we can to help a country that is not guilty of anything else than defending itself against an absurd aggression.
Can you explain just what kind of a message is coming out of this meeting? This is, of course, a very strong visible sign that you're all standing there together. When you're talking about the EU's plans to increase military mobility, Ms. Kallas, how is that linked with NATO's plans, and how do you want to avoid confusion between all the various institutions?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. It is complementing NATO's plans. So we are in constant contact with NATO as well, that we don't duplicate, but we try to contribute. So we have NATO's military plans ready, but then we have all the member states that need to deliver for those capability targets. And that's why we have come up also with the capability coalitions, because there are a lot of capabilities that are too expensive to procure for one country alone, but they are also answering the NATO's military targets for those countries who then cooperate. So no duplication in this regard. When it comes to military mobility, then the roads, bridges, these are member states that need to build those, but they need to be also really in the line of those plans that actually it is member states are able to move military from where it is to where they need it and when they need it. So this is definitely complementary to what NATO is doing. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I also, maybe get a comment from the German Defense Minister? The German Chancellor commented on the ever larger numbers of Ukrainian men who are coming to Germany, but also to the rest of the EU, and held a phone call with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, essentially urging him to rethink rules in Ukraine as well, to make sure that Ukrainian men who are needed at home don't all come to the European Union. Has the Group of Five got a comment on this issue? Did you discuss it?
No, we didn't discuss that, but Denis Shmyhal explained and elaborated about the situation in Ukraine, and he affirmed us that they don't have any longer a real serious problem of sustainable recruitment. They do have still a gap of personnel, and their brigades are getting fulfilled more and more, but still they have an issue. But we didn't discuss particularly that question you mentioned earlier.
Die nächste Frage hat der Herr.
Next question, the gentleman on our left. Eric Busch. My question is about China, apart from Russia, that is a threat to our security. They are very active in the Arctic region, and they are involved in the war against Ukraine. So, did you talk about China in your discussions today? Well, of course, as NATO partners, as the larger NATO partners, we have to talk about the security situation in general. So China is always important. They have an important part in the Indo-Pacific region. They have their own interests. And we saw once again that conflicts and demands are often interconnected, even though they are related to regions far away, North Korea, South Korea, India, Pakistan. Everything is somehow interconnected. So what we do as Europeans and what position we take vis-à-vis China, without declaring them our enemy, we're far away from that, but that is important. Our position is, of course, important. Ja, China ermöglicht ja auch unter anderem den Krieg in die Ukraine, aber es gibt auch andere Themen.
Increasing weaponization of trade, for example, when it comes to critical raw materials that are also necessary for our defense industries. So we discussed this briefly, that in order to get rid of the old dependencies, we should be very careful not to create new ones that could also hurt us. So very briefly, yes, we discussed this. Thank you.
Linus Höller, Defense News.
Sightline to address my question to the High Representative. Not directly related to Ukraine, the Russian Federation has extended the mandate for EU4 in Bosnia, but there's sort of the writing on the wall that this may not continue forever. What steps will the European Union and maybe its member states take in the next while to prepare for an eventual potential veto?
Yes, thank you. Very good question. Actually, Western Balkans was also something that we discussed briefly today. I was just 2 weeks ago in EUFOR Althea in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and you're very right. The mandate is now extended for 1 more year, and then comes the question, what next? So far, there hasn't been a veto by Russia, and there are different reasons for that. But clearly, Western Balkans is our closest neighborhood. The stability there is very important for us. It has two sides. One is, of course, the military presence, so that things don't go out of hand. But the other side is the political side, which is really to help them with the EU enlargement process, to help them to really work together so that the tensions are down. I also plan to visit other Western Balkan countries and other also Bosnia-Herzegovina regions to see what more can we do in order to actually bring the tensions down so that we don't need the intervention as well. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Leo Kramer von der Kiew Post.
Thank you. Leo Kramer, Kiev Post.
Leo Kramer from the Kiev Post. High Representative Kallas. As you know, there was another deadly drone attack last night in Kiev. I just had my colleagues on the phone, and my question would be, would the European Union or the Group of Five format consider supporting Ukraine by defending the Western Ukrainian airspace, like from European territory, for example, with long-range defense systems from European soil, in the end to free up the Ukrainian defense systems for the major cities and for the front? Und dann hätte ich noch eine Frage an den Herrn Minister Pistorius.
And a question to Minister Pistorius. In Germany, we are discussing, or it seems that we have resolved the question about the new model of military service, and we have not just more money available for the armed forces, but with regard to a peace plan in Ukraine. What about the issue of German peace troops for Ukraine to ensure and enforce the ceasefire?
So, of course, what kind of military support to give to Ukraine is up to the member states to decide. It is clear that Ukraine needs more air defense. Like it was already mentioned, 93% of Russian targets have been civilian targets. So in order to defend their country, they need more air defense, they need more ammunition. We also talked about that, what more can we do in this regard, because it's really urgent. Russia wants to show that they can outlast us, and we have to show that that is not true. We are supporting Ukraine so that they can defend their people. But when it comes to concrete air defense equipment, then member states have it, the European Union doesn't have it, so member states need to decide on giving that. Thank you.
Zu der anderen Frage,
about the other question, we have always emphasized in Germany that we will participate in any talks about the peace troops for Ukraine, but we've also said that it makes no sense to discuss what if. Kaja Kallas mentioned earlier that Putin is not taking any steps at all towards a ceasefire or towards peace negotiations. So I think it's important not to reveal your thinking too early. And there's no connection between the military service and peace troops at all. So military service volunteers would not take part in such an operation anyway. Mr. Obremski from the Polish press agency.
What are the factors currently preventing Germany from making a decision to supply Taurus missiles to Ukraine? Could you elaborate on the main concerns or conditions that still need to be addressed before such a step could be taken?
No, I can't.
Herr Kasmus von Al Jazeera.
Mr. Kasmus from Al Jazeera. Hello, Mr. Kasmus, I'm from Al Jazeera, and my question is to Mr. Pistorius. Yesterday there was an agreement in the Bundestag about the new military service legislation. How can that contribute to Europe's security? That's easy to answer. The military service has two purposes. One, to grow up a reserve of 200,000 reservists until the end of the decade. And this new military service is to ensure that people stay between 6 and 23 months to support the active troops, which will also strengthen NATO until the mid of the 30s. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ich verstehe eure taktischen Entscheidungen.